like to call the Budget Committee to order. Ask for approval of the minutes from November 5th. Moved by Supervisor Gerard, seconded by Supervisor Merlino. Any changes or additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The purpose of the meeting today is, last October when we had our budget meetings, it was suggested that we would meet earlier in the year, and I felt that was a worthy idea. We need to find ways to fund our debt. So, in order to research things and look into different ideas, you're gonna need time to do that. So, hence, we're meeting here on the leap day of February. So, that's the main purpose. The additional debt service that will be required for the 2017 budget amounts to $620,000. It's $327,725 for the courts, and $386 minus the $94 that was budgeted in 2016, so it's $292, which is $620,000. So I think hopefully we all have some ideas on how to close this gap, because you have to also take into consideration that there will be probably a $600,000 to $700,000 increase in wages. Health insurance, I think, will be relatively okay there. Who knows what the retirement might do? And there are many other items that I know many of us would like to see worked on or worked at, and that all takes money. So I guess the purpose is to throw it out to the committee to see if there are some ideas on how we can accomplish this feat. I'm not trying to portray it as a crisis, because it's not a crisis. Worst comes to worst, we can fund it out of fund balance if we had to, but that's not the proper way to do it. But I do believe we can find ways to close those. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be for Mike or Paul, and I wouldn't expect you to have that information today, but it would be good to, for this committee to see how we close out our general fund in terms of our operating year. In other words, did anything fall to the fund balance? And that information is only relevant to, we made transfers into the general fund from the fund balance. So we would need to see that as a net, you know what I mean?
Yeah, when we close the books, we usually distribute that information to everybody, what's the status. It's a preliminary because we actually don't have the final audit, isn't available until September, which is way late for what is needed here. So when we close the books, which I'm hoping will be in about another 3 or 4 weeks, we will have that information and we will share it as to where we were exactly at the end of 15.
If we could have that also with, like I say, with whatever we pulled from our unobligated fund balance into our operating condition, not that we do that each and every year necessarily, but it would give us a better sense of that, negative or positive, you see what I'm saying? And the other thing would be, Mr. Chairman, if we significantly reduced our anticipated sales tax revenue projections during the budget process.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that they're not. I think they're conservative, and I think that's where they need to be, but it might not hurt to take a fresh glance at that in terms of a couple of conservative what-ifs anyway, so we could see, where we might land in that regard from where we are presently. Because that would be a big number, even with a small.
Right now, based on what we've received and what was put in the budget as to how it was kind of recalculated, I think we're going to be months under our belt, but it's looking,
Right.
usually the winter section is the toughest, and when we're usually down, and then we're trying to make up in the summer. Right now, we're just about breaking even with our projection, or with the budget projections, I should say. So I think we're gonna be okay with the sales tax. I think it's a very realistic, budgeted item for 16.
Those
Yeah,
might be my two comments on the information that I think would be valuable information to have.
Yeah, I think it needs to, you know, I think it's at a good place, and I think it hasn't been at a good place the last couple of years. No fault, I don't know if it's anybody's fault really, 'cause if you look at the past performance of the sales tax, you know, we should have accomplished what we set down, but to be $500,000 short each year is not a good scenario. Yes.
Just to add to it, I read something that came out of the state controller, that said that, from what I read, is that all counties are not doing well with sales tax, which would sort of fit with what you're saying with, gas. So I don't think it's a local phenomenon, it's a general thing. So hopefully it'll bottom out.
Yeah. There is the, also, additional revenue, new money, is the Medicaid settlement. I know it's a 5-year, settlement, $339,000, but that's an additional $68,000 a year. That would help. Yes, Mr. Stroh.
Thank you, Chairman. You got a very valuable piece of property on the west side of the Northway, where the social services building used to sit, up on the hill. And, you know, I think a substantial source of revenue will be found there, but then it's a one-time shot.
Right.
You'll get it, but still, it's an asset that I think is very liquid. We have to be, some easement issues have to be addressed, it has to be rezoned, so those things should be, underway soon, I would think.
Good. Yeah, I think, like you say, it is one shot, but it would definitely, get us over the hump here. 'Cause gradually we can ease into this. I mean, you know, we've raised, taxes around $625,000 the last, 3 years, so that makes 1.5%. Of course, this year you have a 0.12% inflation rate, so. But there is carryover that we have never really, used, so it's possible to use that and still stay under the tax cap. Yes, Mr. Swan.
Couple of quick things. One, there is I don't know how familiar everybody is with the tobacco, settlements that were handed out, and we get annually, every year, money on that. There, for some reason, and I'm not totally versed on exactly why, but because of a dispute as to how the money was to be distributed, there has been, every year, a portion of that settlement money put into an escrow account, and waiting for a settlement on this, which has gone on, I guess, about close to 10 years. That has been resolved, and at some point within the next 12 months, we will be receiving a shot from that. The last estimate I got was $200,000, but I wouldn't put my hat on that. But at least, you know, that's a little bit more revenue coming in than what we had anticipated, so.
Is that a one-time?
That's a one-time deal. So, and I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna be distributed, whether it's gonna be one shot, or if they're gonna try to do it over a couple of years. We haven't heard all that information. And, the other thing I wanted to just quickly kind of verse the committee on, my plan to try to finance the ACC and the court addition. What we're trying to do right now is do a short-term note for this year for about $3.5 million, which is what the cash flow that SUNY Adirondack needs to get them through till next year. And then next year, do a bond for everything. In other words, for the court, for Adirondack, and pay off the short-term note that we're doing right now. I know there's two reasons that I wanna do that. One, it's basically pushing any payment we have to make on money we need to borrow for SUNY until next year. So the 93, I think it was $93,000 that's budgeted right now for a payment for SUNY will not be needed this year, and we can put that in the reserve and move that into the debt fund and move that into 17. And the other thing is this will give, everybody the chance is working on the addition and the remodeling, a chance to get us a real good solid figure as to what it's gonna cost to get everything done. That way I'm only gonna borrow as much money as we need. I've got a concern that I don't wanna be short 2 or 3 million, and I don't wanna be over 2 or 3 million. And we don't have any real solid estimates yet as to what actually the addition is gonna be and what the renovations are gonna be. So just to give you an update on that. So I'm pushing everything back another year almost, basically.
All right. Yes, Mr. Merlino.
Are you figuring anything about the emergency towers?
No, I haven't.
The 5 or 6 million that we estimated we might need for that, that's not in, we're not even talking about that yet.
No, we're not.
Right. And the only other thing, as some of yous know, I'm working on a tax plan. I have one that I'm gonna unveil at the next county board meeting, if I get permission, take 10 or 15 minutes. Been working on it for a lot of months. I've been speaking to certain supervisors, but I'd like to speak to all, and after this meeting, if everybody's not going to the next meeting, I'd like to spend 10, 15 minutes with some of the supervisors that might be interested and listening to my plan and get a better idea and a handle on what I'm proposing.
Yes, Mr. Bailey.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, have we, I know that, remember the, New York State Commission came in, so we had to add prison guards and so forth. And it was my understanding we were going to add some of those each year, those additional costs. So have we figured in, I remember like $1 million of additional prison.
Yeah, I
Have we
think
figured that in the budget?
I think we're completely up to date.
Yeah, that's up
staff.
to, all the people who've been hired, and that's all in the budget.
So
Right.
we've already accounted for that, okay. Thanks, I just
It,
wanna make
it
sure.
was phased in over 2.5 years. Now, as I say, there are various other projects, you know, and, I think it's kinda good that we are having this meeting, 'cause I think, as, you know, again, personnel is the major cost, you know, everybody knows that. So, I'm probably guilty of it. I signed the sheets, you know, filling the vacancies. Again, I think the committees and also myself need to take a little harder look at, you know, if we could eliminate 3, 4 positions, there's money too, so. But, that's not easy, and I understand that. There's also the issue about invasives that I believe our county attorney's looking at. Switching that money that's now in the general fund, that's $250,000. Last year, we, through the recommendation of Dave Wick, with the Lake George Commission, we removed $50,000 that he didn't think that they would need. So it's down to $250,000, but that's general fund, that's regular tax dollars. There is a possibility of switching that to occupancy tax. I know that doesn't sit well with everybody, but, you know, that's a real possibility. Any other areas we'd like to, yeah?
Have we looked at how purchasing is doing as far as, you know, buying in even larger quantities? Are we gonna see a significant drop in cost, or?
I think she's working up to that. I don't think that we're there yet. I think she's working on office supplies, working on some of the highway materials, and
We have an eyeball maybe, or?
I don't know.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I don't wanna steal, Doug was talking to me before the meeting. We have some old, grants out there that we've been chasing money for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I think we need to make a concerted effort to get that money in. A lot of it has to do with Watershed Coalition, I believe. Some has been out there. I before we get into any more of these grants, or teaming up with anybody on any more grants, we need really to, assign somebody to figure out what's going on. There has been so many emails and so much correspondence within the county, outside the county, to try to figure out what's going on. We need to have a point man or person, to take over and find out where we are. I know there's one in Boat Landing, I guess now the boat wash stations they're waiting on that. Before I would go out and team up with any other outside agency, I'd want them to pay up. Pay up first before we get into that. And I don't know if that's the treasurer's office. Did you guys follow up on that, or who follows up on it? But
Well, we've been talking to Stick and, a lot of people about this for a long time. I mean, if we put it in our budget analysis, so
I know, and I know, that's
Well, we
great.
don't- but we
We have
don't-
budget analysis, we see emails to I believe it's Mr. Decker.
you know,
Right.
We see emails back and forth, but nothing happens.
well, we've had several meetings about this with Paul, and Paul was kind of taking the lead on trying to get Mr. Decker to get things going and to see what's going on. But one of the problems, which is the biggest problem I see is that when we do these things, we expend the money without my office or anybody else ever seeing the signed contracts, the grant letters or anything else. And this is one of the things I think I brought up at, I can't remember what meeting it was now, but said, until we see all of that signed documentation in front of us, we really shouldn't be releasing any money.
Can we get Mr. Decker to come in?
I would think we
I'd
could.
like to hear from Mr. Decker, 'cause he's the
Well, Paul may
the
have some
common
more, I'm
denominator.
not sure where he is on this, but.
Introduce it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. The issue with these grants, and I can tell you exactly what the problem is. First of all, they're complex. The county is one player among many, and the grants are coming in through different municipalities. And the processing of the grants takes an enormous amount of time. And then even when they're processed through the state, they end up in having to involve, like I say, other municipalities. And it seems that these coalition grants are among the most complicated and the longest term grants I have seen in the county in terms of trying to get these things resolved. One of the issues, and you're certainly welcome, and I think you should have Mr. Decker appear before this committee, but I can tell you that I have communicated with him on numerous occasions. And one of them is a really old one, as the chairman knows. This $102,000 has been hanging around for years. And at various times, we were told that there were papers that needed to be filed with the state, and the state got the papers filed. Then the state started an audit, and they weren't going to pay any monies until they completed the audit. And it just goes on and on and on in terms of the blame being put back on the state, essentially, for the delays in these grants. But I think that's only part of the story. The other part of the story is that, like I can tell you, the boat launch one, that was a decision made by this board, that you wanted to fund that in advance before the contracts were signed, just on the basis of the letters, and that we'd catch up because that issue was so important. Well, that's also going to stretch out the length of time that it takes to eventually get the money back in these grants because you funded them so far in advance. So I think what you're going to find, and by the way, it's not to put any blame on anybody, it's just that there's a number of reasons why these things get strung out. Some of it is because we want the project started. They were that important to us, so we advance funded them. One good example, you just did it the other day with the Sheriff's Department, where we've funded that 9/11 upgrades to the New World system based on a letter. We haven't gotten the grant agreement yet. So, and we have every reason to believe you'll get the grant agreement, but we're way up front on it, which is also going to lengthen the time in which you're going to get your money back. So, I think some of it comes from the timing, some of it comes from working with the state, some of it comes from the complexity of the deals that are wrapped up in these things and the things that have to be done to get the money back for the reimbursements. They all take a while. But I think in terms of the other mention, like I say, the biggest issue I see is the ones that we do have tied up with the coalition. So Dave Decker is an appropriate person to come in and speak to you. And then you also have board members, though, that do sit on your coalition that can certainly raise questions concerning these grants if the treasurer provides the information to those members to pursue that. So I think that there's things that you can do, but I also think it's, some of this stuff is caught up in the inherent nature of just this whole process of working with the state and trying to get these grants done.
Mr. Stowe?
Yes, Mr. Dusick's assessment is very accurate. And there are some of us that are meeting with the Deputy Secretary of State this week to see if we can develop a formula moving forward that will help abate some of this tangle. And so we are working on it, and it should get better. But in the meantime, most of the grants that you referenced and that others have referenced are coming to a close. It's been slow, it's been very entangling, it's very messy, but we're getting there. But moving forward, we want to see if we can develop a formula with the Department of State that will allow this process to occur in a much easier, methodical, more organized manner. Okay, so we're working on it.
That'd be great. Mr. Gerard?
I'll go over my dissertation again, but I just wanna know where everybody's tipping point is. I would like to know where things change, and as far as we move forward. The budgets we prepare, we've done a pretty good job with personnel, looking at cutting over the last 8 years. And I think that's been difficult, but we've moved ahead, we've done some really good things. But there's things that come down the pike that we don't have control over. Now, Senator Little was, achieved another family court judge because of the load that we have there. We were solicited for a long period of time from Judge Breen and all the judges for an expansion. When we did human resource building, it was part of that project. We cut it out and didn't have the money at the time. Financial troubles hit the whole United States, and we had to go in a very conservative mode. But with that judge and the trigger mechanism of having to spend now $16 million, that was something that we knew was coming, but it was something we didn't have any control over. We don't have control over the amount of work that family court goes in. We don't have control over the fact that we got another judge and we have to have space, etc. But that's just something that fell onto our table that is going to cost us $16 million. Correction officers, we ran the jail for 12 years, and then we had an audit done, and they said we didn't have enough officers. That's going to cost us $1.5 million more each year from here on out, even though we ran it 12 years before with more prisoners. Confusing to me, but that's another thing that fell down on our budget table out of the sky. Nothing that we had control over, but just got dumped on us, okay? ACC with a fabulous project, and the way they're moving forward. They came in, they need $6 million. They also need it from Washington County. We approved that. I don't think anyone anticipated that. Great project, certainly worthy of them coming before us and having our support. But that just came out of nowhere as far as I'm concerned, in light of all the things we were doing, cutting personnel and moving forward. Okay, we're behind on our roads. The things that people live here 12 months out of the year that should have the best roads, etc. We're a tourism industry, open about 3 months a year, and all our avenues are addressed towards that for that 3 months. But the roads, which are paramount for safety, etc., we have neglected them as far as funding them to bring them up to the level they should be, and we're playing catch up with that. Invasive species, we've thrown some money at that. We've had studies done. We're doing the best we can, but it's not just Lake George, it's all the lakes. Where is that going to end up? That's another thing coming down the pipeline that we're going to have to fund. There's discussions, can we use bed tax money? Should we use bed tax money? Where does all that end up? The radio communications, because they've changed to a digital format and broke the channels in half or whatever, it's messed up all our communications. Another safety issue. We've had an expert engineer come in, electrical engineer, explain it all to us. We're looking at $6 to $9 million to correct that. That's going to fall on our table. Okay, the sales tax that we've enjoyed, that we didn't hit our number last year. But if you remember the weather, every weekend was fabulous. We have had fabulous weather. That is not going to continue to happen. if we get rain on certain weekends through that 3-month period, our sales tax is gonna plummet. We are not prepared for that, okay? But we've enjoyed the harvest of good weather for the last 2 or 3 summers. Is that gonna happen this year? Let's see. We've seen Glens Falls Civic Centers auctioned off and gone to a coalition. We've given them money for up to $250,000, much less all the other things we did, the courts, the seats, the video boards, funding that, what we think is a great promotional deal that we have in this county. And the beat continues there. Now, the mayor is up looking for police protection. And whether we do anything or not, I hear it from all the small towns, they're in the same boat. When you look at trying to buy new equipment, trying to keep up your roads and buy your salt that went crazy a couple years ago, when you're looking at your health care costs, your retirement costs, your raises for your employees, it's hard to keep pace when you don't have a revenue source that's keeping pace with it. So the small towns are having the same exposure that Glens Falls is having. Where does the money come when you try to stay under a 2% tax cap? The Code Blue that we've helped out, minimal, but still we step forward to do that. The Historical Society certainly wants to partner with us, certainly worthy things, but they all cost money. I'm just asking, when is the tipping point where we as a budget committee, we as a body of supervisors say that, you know, we're one of 3 counties that are left with a 7% sales tax. The other 59 have 8%. Washington County certainly could use 8%, but I don't think they want to do it because they'd have to compete with us. But where is the tipping point when we have to look at this legitimately to get the revenue flowing to take care of these things that are falling on our table? Or do we just sit on our hands and kick it down the can, kick the can down the road and let the next supervisors coming on board when we have that bad weather, when we have some more mandated stuff don't have any control, when we really have some fiscal stuff, and then we say, well, we got to raise the sales tax now, and it's going to take over 1.5 to 2 years to do it. And they're telling us that Dan Speck and Betty Little, they don't think it's positive, that it won't float down in the state level. Well, if that's not positive, that they can't pass us a revenue source, why do they pass the fact that we need more correction officers? Why do they pass we need more judges? We have to fund them. Where's it coming from? They can't just say, here's the expense for you, and you can't have a legitimate revenue that 59 other counties have. I don't get it. I'm done.
Okay. I agree. Well, I think sales taxes, definitely needs to be on the table. I don't see why it shouldn't be. Not that I'm any person that likes to raise taxes, but if we're going to do these things, we have to pay for them. And that's what it amounts to. If we don't want to do them, then that's fine. We don't need the money. Yes.
There is a loophole in the sales tax, which is the online thing. People aren't charged a lot of times or whatever. There's nothing we can do about it, but the state or the federal. Is anybody doing anything about enforcing online sales tax or making it, changing the law or anything? I mean, it would be, what Dan's proposing would be more realistic than what I'm talking about, but at least we should address it so people know before we do anything that we've tried every other possibility. Anybody agree?
Yeah, I think that, I think the sales tax, the online sales tax, I think it seems to be a gradual thing. Some of them do it and some of them don't.
The state is starting to get a lot more vigilant on that. I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but they're getting better with it. I mean, you look at like Sears and Walmart, and a lot of the major corporations, when you order online, they're charging the sales tax. You have to pay it. Not all of them, but like I said, it's getting better. It used to be nothing. Now at least we're getting some of it.
Now, I assume it goes by zip code where it's delivered,
Yes.
so hopefully we actually get that revenue.
Well, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't, it goes by zip code of the person who buys it, because like I've bought stuff at Walmart
Okay,
to
yeah.
send to my grandchildren in Baltimore, but the sales tax is based on New York State,
By the purchaser.
so it's not based on what's going on in Maryland, it's based in New York.
Yes, Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, I had a couple comments. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and I know this courthouse thing has been talked about, but it's my understanding a couple things. Number one is we're a county of about 64,000 people. We have one family court judge. There's an initial set of judges that were added across counties, I think it was like 15 or 20 counties got an additional judge. Senator Little went back, lobbied the governor, along with a few other counties, for a second family court judge. So, here we have Saratoga County with 240,000 people, they have 2 family court judges. Here we have Warren County with 64,000 people, we have 1 family court judge. Here we have Washington County with, 50,000 people, they have 1 judge. But I was told by a lawyer the other day, they have 200 more cases, family court cases, a year than Warren County. Now, if anybody had a case for adding another judge, it may have been Washington County. So, sometimes we're our own worst enemies. I don't believe that we warranted a second judge. So that triggering by our own county officials of asking for a second judge triggered this whole process of, the governor said, okay, we'll give you another judge. And that process started a $16 million process right down the line. And now we're at $16 million for a new courthouse, expansion. The judges said, hey, while we're doing this, adding another judge, we could use this and that. There's a lot less expensive options. So, sometimes we go, oh boy, the $16 million courthouse. Well, we can look at ourselves for part of that problem. Second of all, increasing the tax rate from 7 to 8%, as Dan mentioned, that won't pass. Betty and Dan Steck, no. That is no flavor or appetite for increasing sales tax down in Albany. I've been told that probably 5 times. So we're kidding ourselves to think that we can get that, okay? The bottom line is it won't happen, because they have to approve it. We all know the state has to approve any sales tax increase, so that's not gonna happen. So, we blame a lot of these things, and yet we cause some of these things. Not all of them. Some of the mandates with the corrections and so forth wasn't our doing. That was mandated in. I get that, but let's be realistic with ourselves. A lot of these times with these decisions we make on spending is our own doing, and then we go back and say, oh, that's the problem. So I just wanted to let you know my 2 cents on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other 2 cents? Yes, Mr. Connolly.
Just,
You get 2 or 4 cents, Ron?
just one cent. I think if it's not too much trouble, I think that, I'd like to see, that recast on the 5-year plan, based on what we know now, based on what we did last fall when we put the budget together. I think that, now, Mike, you mentioned the gaming money, but that reservation, wasn't that part of, didn't we already, budget those revenues?
That was the tobacco money I was talking about.
Okay.
And we budget, or I shouldn't say, the county budgets based on what we received the previous year. And I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but somewhere around 300,000 sounds right, I'm not sure. But we budget that as a revenue every year.
Right.
Because we get that settlement. Now, part of that money goes to pay the bonds that were taken out at the beginning, when the settlements first came out. This would be, the settlement money that they're talking about would be an additional, and I think it's gonna be a one-time shot above that we have not budgeted.
We have not budgeted, that's what I wanted to know.
Because we didn't even know this was gonna come about until, I think, probably November or December, and we still don't have the information on it as to how much it's actually gonna be and when it's gonna come through.
Do you have an order of magnitude? Do you have a sense? No. I think if we had that projection, I think that would be a good thing to look at for the next meeting. That way we'd all be looking at what the expenses look like. I would assume they would be pretty consistent with what we already have, but perhaps some of the revenue lines have changed. Perhaps some of the expense lines have changed, I don't know, based on the final audit.
So you're just asking for an updated,
An updated,
based on actual numbers that we,
Right,
okay.
you may have to do it a couple of runs, because you're gonna have to make some assumptions after all, right?
Now, it might, just to make sure I'm clear on what you're looking for, you wouldn't want that done until Mike can furnish the actual numbers then at the close of the books, which will
Yeah, I
be,
think
you said,
that's-
about 4 weeks out, Mike?
I think that's
Yeah,
important.
that's probably 4 weeks out at least before and that's our closing of the books, that's not the formal, audit that's done, because that's not due until September, but 99.9% of the time, we're right on top of the same figures that come out then, so, yeah, I mean, as soon as we close up the books, we'll spread that figure out and let you know where, for the end of 15, where we were standing.
And then, Joanne can update the,
Very
plan for you, probably take her 2 to 3 weeks after that, probably, okay.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need that, to know exactly where we are as early as
Right.
possible.
Any other, comments?
One
Mr. Brown.
thing that just occurred to me is the economy is getting better, which means theoretically employment is getting better. Our welfare, is the social services money going down a little bit? That might be a potential reduction, just as a sort of kind of think of things. Keep throwing it against the wall, self little stick.
All right, well, number 2 on the agenda was, also last, October, I'm not sure which meeting it was, we had 3 or 4. We got into a discussion about the airport and, about different models to operate the airport, whether we just flat out sell it, we let the fixed base operator operate the whole thing, or maybe the county operates the whole thing and lets other fixed base operators in. So that was a discussion, and that was one thing, because it was October, it didn't get fully discussed and talked about. It was discussed at one budget meeting, and so I'm gonna bring it up again now, and I know probably not everybody's happy about it, but I think we need to look at that and see, because we also have the contract coming up in a time frame here, 2-3 years, and it would be good to know. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, on that front, I'm happy to report that we've actually gotten a break here, and that is that the EDC was able to hire a consultant to assist in the study of all these different airport options, and we had a phone conference I don't know when it was now, a couple weeks ago maybe, to start this process. Jeff Tennyson will be involved, Russ Dewberry will be involved, I would think the chair of the committee will be involved in that. So there will be a study that will be produced that will look at these different operating models, and I think that'll provide very useful information to the committee. My recommendation would be at this point is to wait for that study to be completed, and then you can use that as an evaluation tool to help you decide what you want to do with your airport going forward.
Great, yes. I spoke to Chairman Gerard about this, and he relayed the same information to me, that EDC is involved in working on it, and I felt that's great. Yeah. Yes, Ms. Seaver.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a quick question about that model and was unaware of that study. But one of those aspects that they're looking at, perhaps Paul or Dan could let me know, is like we lease out the railroad. Is that going to be something that's looked at? Can we lease out the airport in its entirety and look at, instead of losing 800,000, gaining a couple hundred in revenue? Is that one of the options that will come back to us to say whether it works or not?
I guess you could raise that as a question with the consultant. In the phone conversation I was in, it sounded to me like what they were going to look at were the different models that already exist out there and compare some of the other airports' models. In other words, we have a combined model of an FBO and a private party, and they were going to look at just wholly owned by a private party, which maybe is close to the lease model that you're suggesting, or completely managed by the county. And also, you know, so compare, like, right off the bat, it was my understanding they'd be looking at those three options. When you say lease option, if you're referring to an entire lease option, which is the county walks away from everything and the whole thing is maintained, including the runways and everything, by the FBO, you know, I wouldn't know whether or not that is something that, I mean, certainly can ask the question and see what they say. I don't know that we're studying that type of concept, if we're looking at that entire model in that way. But you could certainly, we could mention that there is an interest in at least having that question answered.
I would appreciate that. I just think that maybe that could be an alternative as well, if we're looking at still the county maintaining ownership, a lease model. And I guess I just wasn't sure if that was one of the options, but I don't think it could hurt if we're asking for one more evaluation, if they're already doing the study.
I will email Ed Bartholomew on that question.
And excuse me, I was incorrect on the amount of debt with the loss for the airport. Treasurer is correct, it'd be $600,000.
Loss on the airport? Is that what you said?
Well, that's what's budgeted. I mean, after you take into the count the revenues and everything that are over there, it's about
Right.
$600,000.
Right. Well, some people would say that's a loss, other people would say it's probably not.
I'm just calling it a budget item.
All right, so we'll await the report and we'll go from there. Any other business anyone has?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
I
Simpson.
was wondering, if we're going to, explore, you know, the increase in sales tax, I was wondering if we could, have some kind of projections of what actually it's gonna, I mean, it's easy to figure out how much revenue is coming, but how much of an impact, if we were to keep the current structure that we have, you know, where some of it goes to, you know, our funding of our county operations.
Right.
Some goes back to the towns, and we could see how much of an impact, that would have on county property taxes.
Right.
Is there a way to,
Yep,
I don't know if it would be the treasurer's office?
Yeah, well, I mean, roughly, we've been looking at this, and roughly, we're talking about if you went up 1%, that'd be, Gene, what did we come up with, 15 million roughly?
Between 14 and 16 million.
Yeah, all right.
I have all that information,
Okay.
if you wanna sit down
And
with
if,
it.
and I think the county attorney has been asked, and correct me if I'm wrong, as to whether or not the distribution formula that we use now would continue. I mean, if it does,
I'm gonna talk with Gene, and, I believe if you, to increase your sales tax, you would have to keep the same formula that you currently do, and distributions would remain the same.
that's my
But I
understanding.
think Gene has a plan to reduce property taxes for several years.
So if you look at it that way, then it's a 50-50 split, so if we raise, let's just say 15 million, then 7.5 would go to the towns, and 7.5 would stay. And I mean, that's, you know, we're all rough, that's very rough figures, but that's basically kind of breakdown.
Well, I know there's other ideas of, you know, what can be done with it, but I just would like to see what the actual reduction in the county tax levy or the county tax rate, for the residents of Warren County. If we were to do it that way, plus we have,
I have it all here
Okay.
already. You wanna
both
see it?
sides, both ways?
Both.
Okay.
well, I think that's one of the first things we'd have to nail down, that we have to stay to the current, formula, which I kinda think we would. I think if you start introducing completely new legislation in Albany, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. 'Cause they'd have to read it, and understand it. But I think if you stay with the same way that it's apportioned right now, I think, it probably would have a better chance of making it through the legislature. Yes, Mr.
And
Gerard?
maybe Mike can speak to, if you get that, if it went to fruition, and you had that money, the thought that I had was that, the extra money that we incur, we pay off our debt. We designate it to do the roads we haven't done and to take care of the debt. So those are one-time items that help our budget through the next 20 years. And they pay sustainable, investments to our taxpayers because we've gotten rid of our debt. And that to me, I think, for my constituents, is a saleable item, that we've incurred this debt, and we're trying to raise revenue to get rid of it, so that our debt is down and that we're moving forward more, a lot more healthy. I know that the towns and the cities certainly need relief, but the first avenue that I bring that up in is to reduce the debt and the costing that we've incurred because of certain mandates and moving forward with the radios, et cetera, pay for those things that are falling on our table that we have no resources for. And I think if we were specific, that the taxpayers could understand. My question is, can we do something like that in an appropriation manner to raise the levy?
That would be a board decision, if you wanted to present a plan to try to increase the sales tax, designate a plan as to where the funds are gonna go. I mean, you gotta, in my personal opinion, to try to float this to the state, you got a lot better shot if you say, okay, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z with this money, and that's what it's being used for, period, to reduce taxes, to pay the debt, whatever that might be, than just say, okay, we want, another 1%, we want another $7.5 million to play with. So I mean, but that's a decision that the board would have to make, is where that money, if you could get it, would go.
Do you have to do it in increments of 1%, or can it be like a quarter or half?
Can,
Can do it like that?
I believe so.
Yeah, because there are municipalities that have 8.25, 8.5.
Right. Anything else? Anyone? Mr. Boyhead?
I didn't know if you were at the privilege of floor or not.
Yep.
Thank you. I just, because this committee is the one that deals with the treasurer, he happens to be here, I was just looking at his report that came out last Thursday, and I had a concern about a particular sentence in here. I won't get into the whole Siemens contract thing, which he goes through, and maybe it's not appropriate in this meeting to bring that up, but I have a very serious concern about the fact that it says, we have been directed not to pay any more of the performance assurance portion of the contract. And I can tell you that I've stood up before you at least 3 or 4 times to try to explain why it is so important that we maintain this report. Because all of our guarantees, in the case of Cogen, probably over $4 million, relies on keeping that report intact. This report costs about $8,000 a year, less than $1,000 a month. And somehow it says that we have been directed not to pay any of this anymore. I can't understand that. I'd like someone to explain that to me, why that would be.
Yeah, I don't know as I can explain that.
Well, I guess the short version of this is that in January, after the sale of Westmount, the lease was not assigned to Centers or Warren Equities, or I can't think of the name of the company. So we raised the question, what do we do? And we were told by the last emails that we received, and I have asked this question again, and not received an answer. We asked, what are we supposed to do? Should we be paying this? This was asked of council, and we sent it to Paul, and Kevin was in on some of those emails. The last one was that we should not be paying the performance. However, we have asked for a clarification of that, because I have a concern that this could, I mean, I don't know any of the legal side of this, okay? But if Siemens has now filed some sort of action against us about how this all went down, and I don't know anything about that, but I'm concerned that if we don't pay a portion, are we now making our legal problems worse?
That's why.
And so I have asked, that question is out there, it's been floated to the attorney to the closing attorney, and I'm waiting for feedback on that. So I'm not sure where we are on that at this point. I'm trying to get an opinion from our counsel on that.
So, as I said, it's less than, $8,000 a year. And you've been paying $4,000 a month for absolutely, in my opinion, miserable advice from Larry Polchowitz on what to do with this. This is a very small, number, and, yet it affects a $4 million potential, claim that we have against Siemens. And I would think that anybody in their right mind would say, this is, you know, whether or not, and I could read you verbatim, like, for the fourth time in the record here, what that says, but it says that if you stop those payments, you give up all rights to the, guarantee. And who would wanna argue that in court? And how much is that worth to you? I mean, it's gotta be worth the $8,000 that we've been paying a year for the last 10 years to continue that for, you know, until this thing gets settled. And right now, you know, it's, the Attorney General's looking at it. I was down there just last week at the Attorney General's office for hours talking to him. And, this is not a time to go ahead and, cancel that small payment.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement.
Yeah,
I think it's more than that.
Mr. Chairman, I concur that anything that weakens our position for $8,000 is ludicrous. And it's my understanding Siemens has been pushing school districts and other counties to, hey, just let it go, let, you know, basically go, cancel the contract by not paying that, $8,000 a year. So my opinion is if Siemens wants it, now I'm very leery of it, because obviously they're the ones we're having a challenge with. So, I would be totally against us not paying that $8,000 a year, less than $1,000 a month for the, we should continue with the performance contract and funding of it so that we're not null and void of the contract. That's a no-brainer to me. It's just common sense.
Well, I think this is probably, I'm not a lawyer, but this is probably executive session material, seeing as how we are in potential litigation here.
And this is gonna be coming before finance this afternoon, because there's nothing in the budget to take care of any of this. And so we're gonna have to discuss it there, because I need to get a source of funding, because we've already paid some of this money out.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, it's my understanding we're working with the purchaser on this issue, and this is more an accounting function, not a function that it's not gonna be paid, but I will confirm that with our.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, not so much as
It's not that it's not being paid, it's not gonna be paid by Warren County, it's supposed to be paid by the purchaser.
Correct.
But I will confirm this to make sure, you know, we'll confirm that this is continuing to be paid. That's my understanding, that it's still being paid, just not being paid under the guise of Warren County.
That's not what it says here.
Well, I know.
Ms.
what it says
Sieber.
here, but I think this is purely an accounting function on the treasurer's office, and they needed a revenue and an expense account. Confirm that.
There's nothing in the budget for it for this year.
Nothing in your budget, but
So that's what
it's
we
my
have to do.
understanding that it's still being paid
Yes, it is.
by the purchaser.
We have not received any money from them, but we are paying.
It's still being paid by the purchaser, it's not, okay?
Yep.
But I will confirm.
Yes, Rachel.
And I'm not a lawyer either.
I assume our county attorney will be in our meeting this afternoon, and perhaps that would be an appropriate time to talk with him about this. But also, for some clarification, it was my understanding that the performance, assurance reports are not reimbursable by centers. That is a sole Warren County cost. And so I think before we start figuring out, I'd like some clarification on that. Just have that factual information.
Mr. Ducey.
Yes, I was just gonna suggest that this is all a matter that's being handled by your attorney, so I think the best, avenue would be to not only have the county attorney, but if you by any chance could get, your outside counsel, I think you should probably do that at this point.
Same attorney that got us into breach.
Yep, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? A motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Strauss. All in favor?
You want these committees?
I have,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna be here.